Hello everybody, in this video I'm going to talk a little bit about the relative layout. So it seems like a lot of people, when they start Android, the first layout they use tends to be linear layout, and then when you want to make more complex layouts, sometimes the first kind of thing you jump to is just nesting lots of linear layouts together, and that certainly works to achieve the layout you're looking for, but you could use this thing right here, relative layout, and once you learn how to use it, it'll be a lot easier than nesting all those linear layouts, and it provides benefits for some other reasons. So that's what we're going to talk about today. This is a video basically aimed at people who understand Android and have made some layouts, but maybe not have explored the relative layout yet, so this is for you. Okay, so let's start first. Why is relative layout good? So I mentioned some things already, but we can go down this list here. It's very versatile. You can use it to make anything really that you can come up with. So that's a good thing about it, is once you learn how to do it, you could do anything with it. It's a performance boost, like I mentioned a little bit earlier. If you have lots and lots of linear layouts nested together, instead of using a single relative layout, that results in a little bit worse performance on some devices. So that's why another reason, if you have really complex layouts, it's good to use relative layouts, because it tends to cut down the sort of layers in your view hierarchy tree, if you will. Another good thing about relative layout, and this applies to linear layout too, but for relative layout it's good because you can design your layout in such a way that it's going to scale to different devices, and it's going to still look nice as long as you kind of design it with each one of those in mind. Makes it pretty easy for you to do that though. And the last reason why I really like it, it forces you, and it's not exactly forcing you, but it kind of encourages you to name your views with an ID, which is good because you need to have that ID for like buttons or text views or something if you want to set them from Java code anyway. So this just because the relative layout uses them too, it kind of encourages you to name things, and naming things is good because it creates order in your code, makes your code a lot easier to understand if you use names, especially if you use descriptive names. So that's good about it, I think, is it forces you to name things a little bit. So let's jump into the code. There's nothing really to download. I'm just going to be showing some of the examples inside of Eclipse here. So I got a pretty basic layout going on right now. Just a single relative layout is my parent, and you can see the width and height, they're both set to match parent, which is going to be the size of the screen. And then I got right now just a single view, and it's set to 80 pixels by 80 pixels, and so it's going to be a square, and the background color is blue. So let's check out what that looks like right now. You can see here's my screen, got a plain white screen. This is my relative layout, this is my parent, and then this is our square view right here, and you can see it defaults, if I don't tell it anything else, it defaults to this upper left hand corner. So if I want to move it away from here, then I have to tell it where I want it to go. So that gets us into our first topic, is how do you tell the relative layout where you want your children to go? So there's a couple of different things that you can do here. We can tell it where to go relative to the parent layout. So that's where relative layout gets its name, is we can tell our child to be positioned relative to the parent. So we can do things like Android and center in parent, true, right there. That will move our blue box here to the middle of our parent layout. We'll move it to the center of that. Same way like that, we can do another one called Android colon and center horizontal, let's say, and we'll make that true. Now you can see it's still on the top. It didn't move it down vertical this time. It's only centered horizontally because we set center horizontal to true. So there's a vertical one of those two. So that's one thing you're allowed to do, is center your view within your parent. Another thing that you're allowed to do is align it with the edge of one of your parents. So let's say you want to put a view on the bottom of the screen. You can do that too. So you say Android colon layout underscore align parent and bottom right there, true. And now you can see our blue box is no longer in the center because we took away the center parameter, but we are now in the bottom left corner, because remember, we default to the top left and we only told it where to go vertical wise. We told it to align parent bottom, so it stays on the left side and it goes to the bottom this time. So you can see it's really easy to move your child views around inside your relative layout by kind of comparing them or making it relative to the parent layout itself. You can attach it to all the sides, you can attach it to the middle, you can attach it to the bottom and the top, all of that kind of stuff. It's really easy to do. I'm not going to go into any more examples of that, but you can see pretty much how easy it is, and I do encourage you to kind of make this little example code here. This is just a real basic layout, and make yourself a colored block and just kind of try out some different things, you know, and see where this moves around. You'll learn a lot about relative layout if you do that, but we're going to move on for now. So let's take the align parent off. Let's take that back off. We'll save this. Let's make another box, and this time it's going to be the exact same, so I'm just going to copy and paste that, but I'm going to make it green, let's say, instead of blue. So let's swap those two. That should make it more green. Okay, so now we have two views in here. One of them is the green box and one of them is the blue box, and you can see the green box is covering up the blue one. So that's the default behavior of relative layout, is if I have multiple children layouts, so right now I have two children layouts, if I have multiples, I'm just going to stack them on top of each other in the top left-hand corner. So if you want to make it behave differently, you have to tell it what to do. So let's say we could move the blue one back to the center, right? We learned how to do that just a second ago. So we say center and parent true on the blue one. Now the blue one's in the center, the green one stays up there. Another cool thing we could do is we can set one view's position relative, there's that word again, relative to another view. So we have two children right here. We could make one of them, let's say, below to the other one. So we say ID slash, oh, and here, so this is what I was talking about when I said naming your views, right? I remember I mentioned naming your views a second ago. This is where this comes in. So now I have to create a name, essentially an ID for this view. So let's make a new line here. We're going to say Android ID equals @+ID, because this is the first time I'm declaring this view on this page by the ID. So we say @+ID, and I'm going to name it blue square, because that's descriptive, right? Because we come over to there and it's a blue square when we see it. So it's always good to keep your IDs very descriptive. It's going to make your code easier to read in the long run. So we say we want this second one. This is the green square. So I'm going to actually go ahead, even though I don't need an ID just yet, I'm going to go ahead and make one right now, just because I like to have IDs on everything. So green square right there. And we're going to say Android layout below blue square, right, like that. Save that. And now you can see we got the blue square here and we got the green square below it. So that's another interesting thing you can do with relative layout, is you can lay out two children views and you can relate one's position to the other. So like right here we have below. We could just as easily have to the right of, or to the left of, or above. You get all of those options. So let's change, we're not going to show you all of them, but let's change the one right here, layout, and to the right of right there. So still pointed at blue square, but now instead of below it, we should be to the right of it. So let's just take a look there. Yep, you see we got the blue one, and now we got the green one to the right of it right there. Interesting thing to note, now that the green square is sort of relative to the blue square, if we move the blue square, then the green square should move too. So now if we put this one, let's say center, if we put this one back in the center, we put the blue one back in the center, the green one's going to follow along with it, right? Because we're laying it out to the right of the green one, I mean the blue one. Oh, so look at that. Now you can see we got the blue one in the center, and the green one, it is, you can see this dotted line right here, it is to the right of the blue one, but it's not on the same vertical line. So we're still, the green one is stuck up here at the top, where the blue one is down here in the center. What we could do if we want, I mean, we have a lot of options here, right? If we want to put these two things side by side right here, we have a lot of options. We could take the green one and we could float it down, you know, center vertical in the parent. So we could center it vertically inside of our parent, which would line it up next to the blue one. Another thing we could do is we could set it relative to the top of the blue one. So this is another thing you can do with the relative layout. We say layout underscore align top on the blue square. Oh, we need to have ID slash right there, and also the @ sign right there, @ID slash blue square. So now we should be align top on the blue square. Oh, and I took away the other one. We also need layout underscore and to the right of the blue square. Blue square right there. So now we can see we got the blue one in the center. We told that one center in parent equals true, so that one's in the center. And then we got the green one. It is to the right of the blue one, and it's aligned with the top of the blue one, which means the tops will meet. The tops will be on the same level. So that's how we can move those two squares sort of in relation to each other. Let's see, one other thing real quick. If you want to put a little bit of space in between them, let's say you want them in this same basic shape, rather, you want the green one to the right of the blue one, and you want the blue one in the center. You want that same basic shape, but you want a little bit of white space between them, because white space is good, and it, it keeps things looking clean. So let's say if you had a margin, that's exactly how you do that, is with margin. So we will say margin left on this green square. Since the blue square is to our left, we'll say margin left, and let's just make up a number. Let's say 35 density pixels. That's too much. Let's take it down some. Let's take it down. Let's try 15. Only 15. Save that. Okay. So now there's a little bit of space in between there, the white space. So that is where the margin comes in. So you can see, based on these examples, I only showed you a little bit, but you can see how you can move two items in relation to each other. I know we kind of focused on these colored squares here, but this applies to any view. It could be an image view or a text view, or like a list view. It applies to everything the exact same way that we laid out these squares here. It's just instead of colored squares, you'll have text or images or web views or map views or whatever else. That's the same principles apply to all of those different kinds of views. So I'm going to look. We're going to do one other thing here I want to show you is some padding on the top view. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take center and parent out of that blue one, and I'm going to add a little bit of padding on the parent relative layout. So we're going to say Android : padding. So padding is good. This is another thing where it creates white space around the edge of your screen. So if you have text or something, you don't want to butt it up right against the edge of the screen, because it makes it a little bit harder to see. It's not as nice to look at. So you got a little bit of padding in there, and we'll say, let's say 15 again. 15 density pixels padding. And now we can leave those there. Let's check it out. So now you see we don't have center and parent anymore, so we should default to the top left. But you see we got that 15 pixels padding that's inside of our parent layout. That will create 15 pixels of space before it places any child views. So everything will end up kind of inside its own little border there, which is pretty nice. It keeps the edges of the screen clean, which is good for creating good layouts and interfaces. It's nicer to read that way. So let's see here. Let me just get a quick look. Got a couple of those. Okay, so the next thing we're going to look at is this right here. How can I make a list item? So this is a pretty common layout you see if you're building any kind of lists. You see this kind of thing here where you got an image view over here, and a text for the main label and a text maybe for a secondary label. And sometimes you'll see this more complex also, like in the market. There's lots of different things like stars and stuff in here, but I'm going to show you this one right here. It's a pretty basic one. And once you see how to do this one, you'll know how to apply it to create a different one. So I'm going to go ahead and erase my squares for now, and I'm going to make an image view for the icon. So image view, and I'm going to say copy these width and height right here, but I'm going to make them 80 again. 80, and I'm going to say Android source. I got an image already ready to go here, so at drawable /IC_row, and close off that image view there. Control-Shift-F, that's what I just pressed right there that fixed up all my code. Control-Shift-F, that's a good shortcut if you're using Eclipse to clean up your code a whole lot inside this layout editor. So now you see, here's our icon square right there. So let's add in, we need two text views now, and let's go ahead and give this an ID. Android ID equals an icon image. Now let's go ahead and make two text views, and we'll copy these width and height again. Let's make them wrap content this time. Wrap content right there. And again. And we're going to say text on the top one is title text right there with capital text. Yeah, and I'll close that guy off. So now you can see, Control-Shift-F, clean up the code there. Now you can see title text, we have it, but we're on top of the picture, right? Because that's what relative layout does. We just learned that with the blocks, is it stacks everything on top of each other. So first thing, let's make the text size a little bigger just so we can see it. So let's say right there, text and size, and let's say maybe 20 scaled pixels. How does that look? 20 scale pixels, that's all right. Okay, so 20 scale pixels. Now, what we want to do is we don't want to be stacked on top of the image, so we want to be to the right of it again. So let's say Android layout underscore to the right of, and at ID icon image right there, to the right of the icon image, graphical layout. Now you can see we are to the right of the icon image. So let's say we want to make a little bit of extra white space in there. Let's go ahead and add a margin left and 10 pixels, 10 density pixels, gives us a little bit extra space between there. So now we need our second text view. I am going to copy this one. I'm going to make an ID on both of them at plus ID slash title text, and Android ID equals, and say description text, title text, description text. So now we got to the right of, and we got our margin left here. The last thing we need to do is obviously these two texts are going to be stacked on top of each other. If I change this one, description text right there, change it. Obviously you can see they're stacked on top of each other, because again, that's how relative layout behaves. Unless you tell it otherwise, it's going to stack the views on top of each other. So we say Android and layout underscore below. I'm going to be below the title text right there, title text. And since it's description text, let's go ahead and make it some smaller text, just so we can tell for sure that that one's the title. So there you go. You can see we got not the exact same layout as I showed back here, but you can see how you could create something like this, right? You could change the colors if you want, you can change the sizes, and that's how you get your text lined up and your image view. And of course, then you could take this relative layout here and you could wrap it up inside of a list view and attach some data to it, and you have yourself a nice little list with icons and text and all that fun stuff. Okay, we've talked a lot about building layouts, and how you can lay out various things in relation to the parent, in relation to other child views. And that's all well and good for learning about relative layout, but I'm going to show you something now that's not directly related to relative layout, but it is a very, very, very helpful tool for building layouts in general. And this is a layout inspector that comes part of your SDK. So if you're inside of Eclipse, you can get a device plugged in, or the emulator. Got a device plugged in here, Nexus 4, and if you see this thing right up here, this dump view hierarchy for UI Automator, you can hit that button right there inside of the devices window, and that's going to give you this really awesome view here, which breaks apart this entire screenshot. So this is what the screen on my phone is showing right now. It's showing the Android market with my applications in there, and you can see as I move my mouse around, it highlights a section, and while it highlights a section, I can click on one. It shows me that view inside this whole entire hierarchy for this whole screen. You can see I can also click here, so got this frame layout right here. Inside that, there's a linear layout, frame layout. There's lots of things stacked inside each other here, but we get down to the list view. You can see in the list view, here's a view. That's a row right there. Inside that row is a relative layout. Inside that relative layout is another view, and a relative layout right there for the icon. You can see they use a relative layout instead of just an image view. You got an image view inside there. You got your title text right there, your developer text, and then you got an image view over here for a button. You got some stars right there, but you can see this tool right here, this UI hierarchy dumper. This is good for inspecting other UIs. So if you see something in another app and you want to know how they put it together, I encourage you to check out this tool right here for sure, and take a look at how they did it, and you can learn how other people built their layouts, and you can take the ideas that you like and you can kind of mesh it and make them your own. But this is a good way to learn what how to achieve a certain layout with the structures that Android gives you, like relative layout, linear layout, and list view, and all that stuff. Is a good way to learn that stuff is by looking at either, the applications included with the Android system, so like settings and all. I mean, there's all kinds of applications included. You can do this for anything, no matter what your screen is showing. It will give you this readout right here, so you can always learn how something's built. So that's going to be it for this one, guys. Thanks for watching. I hope you learned a little bit more about relative layout. I hope you're comfortable at least trying to use it the next time that you got to create a layout. And check back soon because we'll have some more videos, and definitely subscribe to the channel if you liked it. Thank you.